Hi, my first grade friends, and anybody else who's out there wanting to learn about insects with us. It's Mrs. Real again. It is time for our next lesson in insects. We've been reading through our blue insect book series. This one is called Homes and Habitats of Insects. So the first book we learned there are so many, there's hundreds of thousands of insects out there. Sometimes there's so many that they think we might not even have discovered all of them, especially in the rainforest where you don't always get back through in there. In our last book, we learned, and we've also learned about the different body parts of an insect. So we know that it has to have a head that has eyes and a mouth and mouth parts, and usually an antenna off of the top. It has a thorax area where its legs, all 6 of them, and only 6 of them. Its wings, if it has 0, 2, or 4, are connected, and then its abdomen, where all of its internal organs are housed, and sometimes they have pinchers or some kind of feelers or something off the bottom of those, or places where they can lay eggs if they're the female insect. The second book, last week we learned about the stages that insects go through. So insects either have a 3-stage life or a 4-stage life. Most of them have 4, and the ones we're talking about so far have had 4. They start as eggs. They turn into larvae. When they hatch out, they're a larva. Then they turn into a pupa, and then they come out into their full-blown adult insect stage. So in those first 3 stages, they don't necessarily have head, thorax, abdomen, 6 legs, wings. They don't always look anything like what they're going to look like when they grow up. So today we're going to learn more about their homes and habitats, and then we are going to check in because remember, I have mealworms. I've been keeping them going. They've been eating or drinking from the apple slices. We're going to check in and see if there's any changes that we can find on our mealworms. And then after that, I'll make a separate video of our story for this week that goes with our insects from our friend Eric Carl, whom I love. So let me screen share. And I will show you the inside of Homes and Habitats of Insects. This is the coolest looking insect on this front cover. He looks a lot like that leaf, so we're going to learn about camouflage some more, where animals can kind of hide a little bit because they look like the place that they are staying. And there's going to be a few pictures in here. Sometimes the pictures that they put with the great descriptions, the captions that they put next to the pictures, because it's a nonfiction book, they go with a part of the book that comes later. So it was kind of confusing to me. So I'm going to skip over some pictures or not talk about them a whole lot, and then we'll come back to them when we're reading about that special part. So Homes and Habitats of Insects. Homes and Habitats of Insects. This cool bug is one that we're going to come back to at the end. Look at where he is. You can also notice his head, his thorax, his abdomen. I see some antenna. I see the legs. These are probably wings that are covering up the abdomen area. Our table of contents tells us that this week we're going to learn about the habits of insects, starting on page 5. Predator and prey. Pretty interesting words. I bet we're going to find them in dark bold print in the first part of the book, and I bet we will also find those words and their definitions in the glossary at the end. That's our own special little dictionary for all those great words that we're learning. Travel and sleep and insect homes. There's a glossary, further reading if this is exciting to us, and our index, which is kind of like our table of contents, but it's a little more specific and it helps you find really detailed things. So the first part is the habits of insects. So an insect has 2 goals in life. The first is to survive or stay alive. The second goal is just as important. It is to make sure that an insect leaves new members of its kind behind when it dies. So it needs to stay alive and it needs to have babies. How an insect goes about this business of survival depends on the species. Do you see that in dark bold print? The species means kind of insect. Scientists have identified more than 800,000 species of insects. Let me show you that number. That's a pretty big number, 800,000. Many of them have very interesting survival habits. So this one is getting a little bit ahead of us, but we're going to get to the next page. This is an assassin bug, this bug on this side, and this is a green bee. We're about to learn about the predator and prey, which is what they eat and what eats them. So this assassin beetle or bug has killed the green bee and he is eating that. But the green bee doesn't eat other animals, it eats plants and it gathers pollen. So predator and prey. No animal can survive without eating, and no animal can survive if it is eaten. On the whole, insects manage to eat more often than they are eaten. This helps the species survive, even if an individual insect is dessert for a bird. Insects of one kind or another eat a great variety of foods. Many insects, like grasshoppers, eat plant material. Others eat animal material. Finding food is usually easier than staying alive. So that was back to this bug. This bug eats plant material. This bug eats animal material. This picture shows us a butterfly. It says many insects feed on plants. Let me show you this part right down here. Or in the case of this butterfly, on liquids in the flowers. So that butterfly just likes to sip nectar from flowers. But insects have several ways to avoid predators, the animals that hunt other animals. Some insects simply fly, hop, or race away from danger. Some insects avoid predators by making themselves look like part of their surroundings. Their color or shape may help them blend in with the plants, for example. A predator may not be able to tell the walking stick insect from a real stick, or the leaf insect from a leaf. Or like our friend on the cover, that's a pretty good blend in with that leaf as well. He's even a little jagged and pokey, so he looks like the edges of the leaf. Now here, they're showing us a plant-eating insect, a grasshopper, has become a meal for the tiny shrew, which is not an insect, it's a mammal, but it eats bugs. It eats insects for his meal. So it's not just other insects eating them, it's other mammals that could eat them as well. Some insects have very useful and unusual ways of protecting themselves. Stink bugs are among the insects that give off a bad odor when alarmed. Bombardier beetles fight off predators with a spray. Bees, wasps, and ants defend themselves by stinging predators. Some caterpillars have hollow hairs loaded with poison. So sometimes you find those fuzzy caterpillars out on the playground or in your backyard, and sometimes it feels like they poke you. That could be kind of the hairs on them are pokey like that. So this is kind of an interesting picture because this bug in here that's now being eaten by the praying mantis. Remember, we learned the praying mantis has these really big front legs, so they hold their prey that they eat. So this is the assassin bug that we met on the other page eating the green bee. So this bug that ate a different bug is now being eaten by a bug. I'm going to skip over these two pictures. I will come back to them like I promised. Monarch butterflies eat the bitter leaves of milkweed. A bird that grabs a bitter tasting monarch won't repeat its mistake. Bitter is a taste that you don't like. And so if they eat the monarch butterfly, it tastes like the milkweed leaves that it eats, and nobody else likes those. So then birds don't want to get butterflies anymore. And that bird won't attack a viceroy butterfly either. Why? Because a viceroy looks like or mimics the monarch. It pretends to be a monarch butterfly, and they're like, oh, those are the ones that taste nasty. I'm not going to eat those. Some beetles have long pinching jaws. Those jaws catch prey, the animals the beetles eat. But the jaws also help the beetle defend itself. So this is a little bit tricky to see. This part up on the top, that's slightly darker brown, is a beetle larva. So remember, they go from egg to pupa to larva. No, egg to larva, sorry. They need to eat before they turn into a pupa. So this is a larva of a beetle eating the larva of a salamander, which is basically a lizardy thing. Not an insect, but they still go through stages sometimes too. So this is a larva eating another animal. Ooh, that's a pretty picture. Travel and sleep. Many insects survive cold winters by escaping to warmer places. Their travels are called migrations. There's another great word in our dark bold print. Migration is unusual among insects. Nature has designed other ways for most insect species to survive. But certain locusts, remember those are like grasshoppers, moths, and butterflies make yearly flights to escape winter. The most famous insect migration is the monarch butterflies. Monarchs east of the Rocky Mountains, for example, migrate south in autumn. They fly to mountains near Mexico City. There have been certain times that in Tucson it seems like butterflies have migrated through because we see a lot of them. So this is the monarch butterflies at the end of their migration. They lived someplace where it was going to snow and get cold, and they headed south to the mountains of central Mexico. And they come in huge bunches, just thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And then they'll go down to where it's warm in the wintertime, and they'll stay there, and they'll eat, and they'll lay their eggs. And then those new babies will hatch, and when they turn into butterflies, they will then fly north when it gets warmer back up here. Winter means cold weather and the end of an insect's food supply. Monarchs fly away from winter. Some insects hibernate to survive winter. Here's another great bold word, hibernate. Animals that hibernate go into a deep sleep. Kind of like we know bears eat a lot of food, they crawl into a cave and they sleep for the winter, and then they wake up in the spring. Animals that hibernate go into a deep sleep. Their body systems, such as breathing, nearly stop. Hibernating animals use little energy, so they don't need to eat. They wake up and become active in the spring. So this is a moth. It says, still as the stone wall of this Iowa cave, a moth hibernates winter away. So it found a cave somewhere in Iowa where it was living, and it hung up on the wall there, and it stayed there all winter because it snows in Iowa and it gets cold. And when it's spring and it warms up, then they come back out. All right, we're moving on to insect homes. Insects often live among leaves, on tree bark, or under roots and logs. But some species live in nests or homes that they build. Some termites build little towers of mud. Tent caterpillars live in tents made of silky material. Several moths spin silk homes called cocoons. Each cocoon is like a tight, waterproof sleeping bag for the moth pupa inside. The pupa is one of the life stages many insects go through. Last week we read The Very Hungry Caterpillar, where our egg hatched into a caterpillar, which was the larva part of it. He ate through all of those things and then spun himself a chrysalis, or a cocoon, if he was a moth. And they go in there, and then they transform into a butterfly or a moth. So they talked about here about termites and silk moths. Those are the two pictures that we skipped. So in this picture, it says these tent caterpillars live in a tent of silky threads they spun on this wild cherry tree. So if you look carefully, so I see all the red dots that are cherries. Back in the background, you can see there's a caterpillar, there's a caterpillar, there's some caterpillars, there's some caterpillars. So it looks like a big, huge, thick spider web, and they kind of make themselves a little place to live, and they go inside and they hang out. This picture, they talked about termites building mud mounds. So this is a stump in the Northern Territory of Australia. You can see the stump right in the middle, and then they've drilled holes through it, excuse me guys, climbed through it, put mud all around it, and made themselves a big mud mound. That's where termites live. This is a paper wasp nest built in Montana, hanging from a tree. We're going to learn more about that right now. Wasps can't read paper, but some of them can make it. A wasp produces paper by chewing bits of plants or old wood into a liquid. The liquid dries into thin layers of paper that become a nest. The spittlebug lives in a home of bubbles that look like spit. That's that front picture that I skipped over, said we'd come back to. Here's our spittlebug. He makes a frothy, bubbly pile, and that's where he hangs out. It's kind of like he lives in a bubble bath all the time. That might not be too bad. All right, so go back and check our glossary really quickly. We learned about cocoons. That's a moth's pupa and its silky covering. If it's a butterfly making that same kind of thing, it's a chrysalis. Hibernate means to enter a deep sleep-like state during the winter. Migration means to go away from where it's cold. You take a long, and it is a really, really long trip for them. And they go down where they can stay warm. Mimic means to copy. Predator is an animal that hunts and kills other animals for food. Prey is the special name for the food, an animal that is hunted for food. The pupa is the third stage of growth in most insects. So it goes egg, larva, pupa, adult. And species is the kind or a certain type of an insect in the group of insects. So in the world of butterflies, one certain type is the viceroy butterfly or the monarch butterfly. Those are the species. So let's go back and talk about our pupa. We've been learning that insects go through cycles. Most of them go through 4 stages in their cycle. Like our hungry caterpillar last week, started as an egg, hatched as a larva, which was the little caterpillar. He got bigger, he wrapped himself up into his chrysalis, and then he came out as the adult. So we're going to check on our mealworms. I've been keeping them on the area, in the area where I keep all of your insect stuff, ready to teach. I check on them. They have holes in their container, so they have air, and I've been putting apples in them. So today, I want to check and see if we can notice any differences in them, see if anything else is happening, and I'm going to pick out the old apple chunks and give them some fresh apple. So remember that the brown stuff that they're in is just bran. Bran is a food thing that you could make into cereal. If you have raisin bran, the brown flakes are the bran. This is just chopped up littler. You could actually eat bran like this if you were looking for some fiber in your diet to be healthy. So I'm picking out the apples that are no good. They've sucked most of the juice out of them. They've gotten them, they use them for food and water. We'll let go of that one. I'll get you a new one. And now that I woke them up a little bit, they're moving around. Do you notice any differences in these, friends? I think they're getting bigger. Some of them are looking quite chubby. So they're like the hungry caterpillar, but all they get is apples, and they do eat from the bran too. They're really, really moving. And then I'm noticing that there are some that have changed color. Now, changing color might be a good thing, and it might be not such a good thing. So I'm going to move some over to the side that have changed color. Whoops, sorry, you went too far, buddy. Back on the plate. This one looks like it's getting a little darker. He's not moving anymore. All right, the rest of them look like they kind of did when we started, but they're getting bigger. They're all getting a little bit darker colored. And these, let's see if I lift them up closer, if it'll stay focused for you. This one is looking a little flatter, a little wider. So I don't know what those changes mean exactly yet. I think we need to wait and see. Because I do know that sometimes if they didn't get enough food or if they didn't get enough air and they did not live past this stage, then they'll turn brown and crunchy and dry up. But I also know that they're supposed to be changing any time now. So I'm not sure I'm going to say that they are dead and brown and dried and crunchy quite yet. I'm going to say let's keep them in here and see if they are just working their way into their next stage of insect life. What does a mealworm change into next? I think we'll wait around and find out. All right, my friends, so I am going to put these back. I'm going to add some fresh apple. Here's a little bowl. I have some fresh apple chunks. I'm just going to put that in when I put them back in their big container. And we'll keep watching and we'll keep waiting and we'll keep wondering. And maybe if you have time on your computer when nobody else in your family needs it and you haven't spent hours already sitting in front of it, maybe you can check and see, what do mealworms change into? By next week, I bet we'll have some more questions answered by looking at our mealworms. So I'm going to tell you that the next story I have for you, I'm going to make a different video so it's not connected to this one because this one's getting kind of long. I have another Eric Carle story for you, and it's about a lot of insects. So I will see you there pretty soon. Bye, friends.